All right, we're recording.
Well, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Wildfire Cluster meeting this month. And we are privileged to have Mike Pavolonis from NOAA NESDIS, who is the Wildland Fire Program Manager, here presenting the new NOAA Wildfire Data Portal using the NOAA satellites for wildfire response and management. And we will have a presentation first and then open up for any questions. And the session is being recorded for those who cannot join and will be posted on the ESIP YouTube channel for others to watch as well. Without further ado, Mike, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Now I just have to replicate what I did before. I don't know if you're seeing the slides or not.
Yes.
Okay, everything's good. Okay. I lost you guys, but I'll pretend I can see you. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Tim, and all of the Wildfire Cluster organizers for inviting me to give this update on some new tools, including the next generation fire system, and better accessibility and interoperability via the NOAA NESDIS Wildland Fire Data Portal. Two things that we're very excited about, and we've seen really grow in the last several years, and actually have made their way into real world use to a pretty large extent. So as Douglas said, I'm the NOAA NESDIS Wildland Fire Program Manager. This is a big team effort. I'll try to recognize the institutions and some of the folks throughout the presentation here. I just want to start with, very big picture where NOAA fits in wildland fire. So NOAA provides services and information for every phase of the wildfire problem, before the fire, during, and after, on a range of timescales, from seasonal forecasts of the weather that support fire danger and wildfire outlooks, to the warning timescale. So red flag warnings and being a disseminator of fire warnings, for instance. And in all of these, satellite data plays some role. And the two programs of record right now, at least with Earth viewing instruments, are, and I'm not going to use a lot of acronyms in this talk, but I will need to use a few so I don't have to spell out the acronyms every time. But the two satellite programs of record are the GOES and the JPSS. GOES stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And that's what I'll talk about first here, introduce you to that. So that is a satellite that is parked about 22,000 miles above the equator. And that allows it to take very, very frequent images over a given hemispheric area, in our case, the Western Hemisphere. It could take images as frequent as every 30 seconds, or a small area, but we get the Western Hemisphere imaged at least every 10 minutes with this sensor. And so it's not only revolutionary and a backbone of weather forecasting, but for hazards like wildfire, it really is a game changer for early detection of new fire ignitions and near continuous monitoring of fire and smoke that's on the landscape at that very, very frequent image cadence. Of course, the spatial resolution is a bit of a trade-off. Each pixel is about 1,000 acres in size. Despite that, you can detect fires that are much, much smaller than 1,000 acres within that pixel, as I'll demonstrate. But the spatial detail does matter, and that's where the JPSS, or the Joint Polar Satellite System satellites, come in. These are in low Earth orbit, so they're only about 500 miles above the Earth, and they're sun synchronous. So they overpass at roughly the same time, same local solar time every single day. For each satellite, you get about 2 overpasses, a little bit more as you go further towards the polar regions. But it has a sensor that provides imaging at 375 meter resolution, which equates to about a 35-acre pixel. And that allows you to resolve much, much greater detail about the location of heat and smoke, as well as just for weather imaging as well. So The JPSS satellites also have other instruments that have unique capabilities that tell us a lot about the composition of the atmosphere, and as well as a low light sensor at night that has a unique capability to see smoke at night. So the JPSS satellites and the GOES satellites really are designed to be complementary because we can't get every attribute we need from a single orbit. You need both of these orbits, the one over the equator and the sun synchronous orbit. NOAA, NESDIS has a long history of making satellite drive products in support of wildland fire, dating back decades. So, before, during, and after the fire, the products are sort of addressing vegetation health, active fire detection and monitoring, smoke detection and smoke emission rate work, as well as post-fire burn scar mapping. So a lot of these products have been around for a long time. They are used, they are highly valuable. But with these satellite capabilities, it often takes a few years to really understand the true extent of the capabilities. And it turns out both the GOES-R and the JPSS satellites are even more valuable than anticipated. And that opens the door to new and improved applications. And that's really the focus of this talk. Is a few years ago, we had an opportunity to start a project developing something called the Next Generation Fire System, or NGFS. The goal of this system is to take full advantage of NOAA satellite data for early, timely detection of new fires and near continuous monitoring of fire and smoke from satellite in a way that is more resilient to, obstructions such as cloud cover. And this is a system that has been and continues to be co-developed with the National Weather Service and a lot of their partners in land management and first response and emergency management. It was a system that was successfully demonstrated at the NOAA Fire Testbed, which was led by our colleagues at the OAR line office in NOAA, where a few years ago, we brought together National Weather Service forecasters and their land management partners to do a very realistic simulation of different wildfire outbreak scenarios and how to utilize satellite for early detection, communicating that detection, having a common operating picture, and then when a fire evolves to become a threat to values at risk, how the Weather Service and their partners coordinate on warning the public. This is a big effort. It's a big team. So all the folks that have worked on NOAA NESDIS satellite products for wildland fire over the course of many years are part of this effort to develop the next generation fire system. We also have some new partners, such as the University of California, San Diego, as part of this massive effort. A couple of key points that I always like to sort of establish before I get into it. So the NGFS, it's currently experimental, but it is expected to achieve full operational status in 2026, so later this year. It's a tool for human decision makers. It's a sophisticated form of automation, but in the end, the decision making still lies with human decision makers. It's a piece of a much larger data information puzzle. No single technology or product provides all of the answers all of the time. Different technologies and different data sources have to work together. So interoperability is absolutely critical. The NGFS is for detecting and tracking of potential fires, regardless of the fire management strategy. So not all fire on the landscape is bad. Some fire on the landscape is natural. So just detecting a fire does not imply what the subsequent management strategy will be. It's continually improving based on user feedback. So that co-development is just been, we've really put a lot of emphasis on that. We don't want to have a solution in search of problems. We want to understand problems and develop a solution for those problems. Another general point here is that satellites, they highlight general areas where heat may be present. And so, but you shouldn't use them to infer the exact location of sources, including fires, right? So, we do have like resolution limitations here. So You have to be a little bit careful about the conclusions you draw. Okay, some of the unique features of the NGFS. One, it's specifically designed for early detection and alerting. It's designed to detect fires in a way that is consistent with human expert analysis of the underlying satellite imagery, which by definition is artificial intelligence. That is the upper limit of performance. If you cannot see it in the imagery, then there's no algorithm that can pull it out of that data. It also has more accurate, informative geolocation, so better location information on fires. I'll show an example of what that means. It is designed to be more resilient to clouds and smoke, so fewer disruptions due to that. It's not impervious to those things, but it is more resilient. It employs an event data model. So fires are tracked as events. So a cluster of pixels that belongs to the same fire is automatically grouped together and tracked over time, and then integrated with complementary geospatial layer information on, geography, fire weather, wildfire perimeter information and attributes. And so just adds a lot of value to what the satellite in and of itself can see. There's an improved screening of non-fire thermal anomalies. There are things other than fires that are hot, industrial sources, volcanoes, other things. And it's also designed to be sensor agnostic, so it can be readily applied to new satellite sensors as they come on, whether they're in geostationary or low Earth orbit. So here's just an example that really illustrates the sensitivity of the geostationary satellites, the GOES satellites. So what we have here is minute by minute, we have GOES satellite imagery in the upper left, time synced with camera data in Shasta County, California. And you can see there's a small fire there. That fire during this time period was between about a half and 1 acre during this period. And you can see in the satellite data, you could see that little flickering where the arrow is there responding to the heat from a fire that is less than an acre small, even though the size of the satellite pixel is about 1,000 acres. So when something is really hot, even though it takes up a small portion of the pixel, the satellite is still sensitive to the energy from that hot emitter. So this is just one of those really rare use cases where the resolution of the data, it has an impact on what you can sense in terms of hot emitters, but you can do much better than the resolution of the satellite data. Okay, so here's an example bringing it all together. This is a fire that was near Broomfield, Colorado back in January. So this is the satellite imagery 1 minute at a time. On top of that satellite imagery, you'll see the orange polygons. Those are the automated detections from the NGFS. On the bottom, you'll see the time synced camera. And then when it pops in on the right, the upper right, you'll see the watch duty reports when those started coming in. So this is all minute by minute. So you're going to see, oops, restart that. Sorry. There we go. So restart that. So what you're going to see here is the NGFS responding to the signal in that satellite imagery, detected the fire. And then it wasn't until 6 minutes after that initial detection that the camera was even swiveled around to view the fire. And then it was another 6 minutes after that when it was picked up by watch duty. So the NGFS is not going to detect every fire before all other sources. It will some of the time, but that some of the time is valuable. But the other point I want to make here is that it's really important to bring all of these data sources and information together. There is no single source that is going to answer all of the questions. But you get an idea here of the sensitivity that we get and the ability to detect those little flickers in the satellite imagery at minute by minute intervals that are actually corresponding to the ignition of a new fire. The other thing the NGFS does, it takes into account with the geolocation, very like local scale topographic influences. Because the satellite's looking at an angle, you can actually have displacements of the pixel from the true lat lon in the baseline data set. Normally, for most applications, you won't notice it. It doesn't matter. But for a local scale application like fire detection, it matters quite a bit. So what you're seeing here is that same fire I showed on the previous slide. You can see the darker gray pixel there corresponding to the heat. And what you're seeing is the view from the GOES East satellites. There's two GOES satellites, one in an eastern position, one in a western position. And you're seeing at the same time the view from the eastern satellite and the western satellite. They're looking at different viewing angles, but the heat is lining up in the same pixel, despite those different viewing angles. Actually, what I was showing here is the heat not lining up. I got ahead of myself, is the heat not lining up because you're looking at it from two different viewing angles. So you can see here, the heat is displaced from the actual fire location, and that displacement varies depending on which satellite you have. So here is what it looks like with the NGFS. It lines up with the actual location of the fire, and regardless of the viewing angle that you have, it still lines up. So for locating a fire, it's the difference between putting it in one part of the wildland interface or another. So, with the legacy geolocation, you're putting it in a completely different part of the wildland urban interface than with the NGFS, and the NGFS is correctly locating the fire in the right part of the wildland urban interface in this case. I mentioned this is a sensor agnostic approach, so it's not just GOES. Been working a lot with the low Earth orbit JPSS satellites, particularly in Alaska, where they add quite a bit of value because you get a lot of overpasses, and the geostationary satellite viewing degrades because of the large viewing angle. So from last summer, we saw many instances where the NGFS detected fires 7.5 hours earlier than our previous ability to detect these fires in this satellite data, and it provided the first indication that there was a new fire on the landscape. There's also a number of interfaces that take advantage of the unique attributes of this data. There's a dashboard hosted by the University of Wisconsin that provides, it highlights potential new fires detected by the NGFS. And you can sort those detections based on geography and fire weather conditions. There's an audible alert function. And then there's direct access to the underlying satellite imagery within web mapping services so that you can quickly assess the location of that detection and assess whether or not further action is required. The event-centric data model also allows you to track fires near continuously as they evolve in terms of their intensity. So this is another map that color codes fires by their intensity, and then you can interrogate each one of those fires and get a time series of that intensity. And the intensity comes through something called the fire radiative power parameter. The higher that parameter, the more intense the fire. And we've had a lot of early adoption of this in real world operations. So following the successful testbed demonstration that occurred in June of 2024, particularly in the Southern Great Plains, we had both the National Weather Service and their local and state partners integrate the NGFS basically into their operational decision-making, even though the NGFS itself was experimental. And so we had the Weather Service utilizing it to help identify fires more quickly on high impact fire weather days. And then beyond that, their partners in state forestry actually brought the NGFS into their dispatch centers so that they're actually using it alongside the 911 system to dispatch resources to fires. And they were finding undocumented controlled burns the size of 2 pickup trucks with this capability. And on these high impact fire weather days, they would actually pre-position firefighting resources in locations where the fire weather conditions were expected to be worse or be most impactful. And they would have firefighters with tablets up looking for new detections from the satellite data. And so this all came together during an outbreak on March 14th, 2025 that was highly impactful. And on this day, there were 19 fires that were first detected by NOAA satellites. 12 of those came directly from the NGFS system. And for every new fire that's detected, Oklahoma Forestry Services runs a fire spread model and projects against values at risk. If that fire is not contained, what the spread will be and what the damage would be to values at risk, life, property. Well, property and structures primarily, life is harder to gauge, but it certainly becomes a threat to life. And from that analysis, they determined that those 19 early detections, which allowed firefighters to control those 19 fires under extreme fire weather conditions, helped them save about $850 million worth of structures and property. And we've seen this repeated this fire season as well. March and February were very, very active in the Southern Great Plains. And there were similar analyses done where the early detection, literally seconds and minutes matter when you have extreme fire weather conditions. And we're seeing this information actually having a real tangible impact in the real world. And so, with that, it's more important than ever to ensure timely and robust access to this information. And that's where something called the NOAA NESDIS Wildland Fire Data Portal comes in. So this is currently a beta release. So it's not perfect. Doesn't have all the features that we want it to have, but it has a minimum set of features to make the NGFS more accessible, both through a map user interface and through data services that allow users to bring the data into their own applications, whether it's ArcGIS or some other web mapping application. It allows them to do that through these data services. The data services are compliant with OGC data standards, so they're designed to be interoperable. I do want to just stop quick and make sure I recognize the very large team that worked on both the NGFS and the Wildland Fire Data Portal. I can't read off all of the names here, but I did want to make sure we acknowledge the great teams behind this work. These are the people that really made this happen. Okay, so some highlights of the Wildland Fire Data Portal. So first on the left, the map interface. It allows visualization of the NGFS detections within the context of the imagery from which they were derived. And the thing about the imagery is it's not only terrain corrected so that geolocation is more accurate, as I highlighted earlier, but it is highly optimized to be appropriate for any zoom level. So you want to look at the national scale, you can look at the national scale. You want to look at the regional scale, you can do that. You want to zoom all the way into the local scale. The imagery is going to be optimized for that. It's not going to get super fuzzy on you. It will maintain its integrity at very, very high zoom levels, which is very unique. The other thing are the data services. So if you don't want to go to our map interface, you have your own platform, whether it's like ArcGIS. Well, let's just say it's ArcGIS because that's commonly used in Wildland Fire. You can actually bring both the imagery and the detections into your platform. So I demonstrated that here on the right with NOAA's Geo platform, which is an instance of ArcGIS online, where all I did was point the platform at the APIs, and I was able to directly visualize the imagery and NGFS detections in ArcGIS and animate them, which is pretty cool. So just to sort of walk you through the map UI a little bit here. So I want to first talk about the satellite sources that are available in the map UI at present. We have a 5-minute cadence domain that you see here. This domain stays fixed. It doesn't change. This is from the GOES East satellite. In addition to that, from that same satellite, there are 2 1-minute floating sectors that are available. Those sectors move around. They could be in different locations. They could even be stacked on top of each other so that you effectively get 30-second imagery. That sometimes happens. But this is what provides 1-minute imagery. And for high fire weather impact conditions, we often have that 1-minute imagery. And then there's a second satellite in the western position, and that provides this fixed domain at 5-minute cadence that overlaps partly with the goes east domain. And that too has 2 floating 1-minute sectors that move around or can be stacked on top of each other to get 30-second imagery. So these are the satellite data sources that are available through our both the data services and the map UI at present. And there's different image types that are available. We have 7 different image types, from simple single band imagery to multispectral imagery, as well as some basic supplemental data layers that you can see there. There are time controls, so you can animate and step through time. You could go back in time. We have data that goes back about a year at this point. Of course, you could pan and zoom all the way into the local scale. And then there's basic set of map tools that you would expect with any map that allow you to draw and annotate. And you can actually order some data in terms of the NGFS fire detections using some of these tools as well. So there's an interactive capability there. When you zoom in, you can probe the NGFS fire detections, and it will give you a whole bunch of attributes associated with that probe, including event level attributes. So if a fire is associated with a known incident, it'll tell you that. In this case, it's the Dragon Bravo fire from last year at the north rim of the Grand Canyon. The NGFS automatically groups all these pixels into the same fire and tracks it over time. So it provides a data model that is more consistent with how humans look at the fire. The NGFS and the data portal, we've seen a lot of big uptick in utilization. The beta release came out towards the end of January, and we saw a rapid increase, in large part because of the combination of enhanced fire activity in February and March, but also because of a lot more exposure. So the Watch Duty app, which I think has about 16 million unique users, started referencing the NOAA Wildland Fire Data Portal in a lot of their reports and linking to it. And with that, we saw a pretty substantial increase in traffic. So there were days where we were getting well over 1 million requests. And the nice thing is, this is hosted in a cloud environment. And so that environment, the cloud was able to adjust to that increased demand and the performance of the site. We didn't notice any degradation in it. And particularly on the middle of the month when we had the major wildfire outbreak in Nebraska, there were a lot of watch duty citations as we had these rapidly moving grassland fires, and we saw the traffic go way up. This is just an example of one of those rapidly moving grassland fires. This is the Morel fire in Nebraska on March 12th. Look at how quickly that fire goes from ignition to impacting multiple counties in a very short period of time. The larger the fire and the faster moving it is, the more impactful this satellite data is. This is just a more recent example. This is from yesterday. So yesterday there was a new fire start in New Mexico, and you could see it here in Watch Duty. And they once again referenced the NOAA Wildland Fire Data Portal with a link. And that link will take you directly to that fire, where, again, the nice thing about this is the ability to zoom all the way in to that local scale to interrogate that fire in much greater detail. And then once you zoom in, again, you get all of these attributes. I'll point out some additional attributes here, including the land cover information within that pixel at very high resolution. There are other applications. This imagery is just for general purpose, but just keeping it somewhat tied to hotspot detection. Here's an example of the Artemis 2 launch, which is super cool, right? You can see the rocket launch trail there. In addition, the NGFS detected the hotspots from that rocket launch. So it's not just fires that it detects. It tries to distinguish fires from other things, but it will detect things like rocket launches. Here's an example from Hawaii. This is from earlier in March, a fairly substantial eruptive event at Kilauea, where you can see the eruptive cloud there. And of course, it also produced a lot of lava, and the lava is very hot. That was also detected by the NGFS. This is an example from yesterday where just animating all of the burning going on right now in the Flint Hills of Kansas. Every year, there's a lot of those grasses are burned to a large degree in the Flint Hills, can generate a lot of smoke, and it has been generating a lot of smoke. You could see it in the true color imagery here, but this is actually, we're viewing this animation through ArcGIS Online instead of our map user interface. So this is an example of using the APIs, the Wildland Fire Data Portal data services, to bring the imagery and the fire detections to another platform as opposed to having to go to our website. So you can see the smoke plumes here going from south to north. But animating GOES imagery in ArcGIS is not something you see too often, but you know, and I'm not saying it's 100% frictionless, but it's pretty cool that we're at a point where we can be doing that now. And those data services are helping our partners. So this is just an example. So the California Office of Emergency Services is using the data services to populate their initial attack viewer at the Wildfire Forecast and Threat Intelligence Integration Center in Sacramento. This is the hub of information for wildland fire in California. So they're using the data services to highlight new NGFS detections on that initial attack dashboard, along with their other sources of detections, California Highway Patrol, 911, you know, the official wildland fire reporting system. And so this was a case where a fire was detected in Inyo County, California, and the NGFS detection actually came in 10 minutes before the first 911 call in this instance. The data services, I was able to figure out that ArcGIS thing because there's some really nice tutorials that the team put together. So if you go to our main page and go to the tutorials tab, you'll see tutorials that allow you to, you know, learn how to do this in these different systems and different ways. There's also within you can bypass the API, direct use of the API, and use this really simple interface to it that we provide if you just need to quickly download some data. But of course, you can get at the full API and have all the options for filtering on all those rich attributes that the NGFS provides through the full API, and the tutorials will help you do that. If you're a coder and you want to work with this data in Python and you're writing scripts, there's a tutorial on how to do that as well. So you can get programmatic access to both the imagery and the detections. One of the big things is we want this development effort to continue to be informed by user community feedback. So we created a survey form where you can provide us with feedback on the portal. It's a beta release now, so you know, it will continue very much to evolve, and we want your feedback. So if you're able to capture this URL or this QR code, please don't hesitate to. It's a quick form. Tell us as little or as much as you want, but any feedback is helpful. Okay, last one. So what's next? The NGFS is scheduled to be transitioned to full operations in the cloud later in 2026, notionally by the end of September. The Wildland Fire Data Portal is going to continue to evolve. So we know it's a beta release. There's some bugs that need to be fixed. There's some improvements to be had. And there's also more things, more features that can be added, including extending the data surfaces, adding more to data layers, adding more spatial coverage, more perhaps dashboard applications forthcoming. But we want all of it to be responsive to user community feedback to the extent that we can, right? We don't have infinite resources, but we want to make the most of what we have in terms of trying to meet end user community needs to the extent possible. I'll end with this so that you can once again check out the URL. If you just Google NESDIS Wildland Fire Data Portal, you'll be able to find it quite easily as well. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to get out of this so I can once again see the Zoom meeting. And hopefully we have time for a few questions.
Thanks, Mike. This is great, excellent. And I think a lot of people are really excited to see the data portals. Let's see if there's any questions. I can start with a simple question while others raising their hands. So for those wildfire data portals, are those historical detected fire also going to be available for people if they want to go back to do some of the retrospective analysis?
Yeah, as of right now, there is 1 year of data available going back
Okay,
about to April of 25. There may there isn't a plan to do limited reprocessing of the GOES-R data record, which would make a longer subset of the GOES-R data record available. So I don't think we're going to have the entire data record, but I think there's a good possibility we'll have a longer data record by this time next year.
great. Thanks, Mike. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Mike. Thanks. This is great. I think you guys really deserve a medal for this one because the NGFS has been pretty responsive and generating a lot of excitement. I have a couple of questions. The first one is Douglas took it about ordering data. If somebody has a wildfire that is detected and they don't hear about it for, let's say, an hour, and they're behind the curve of maybe an electric utility shutting off electricity or whatever to serve some customers, can they go back and get more details? So I think the answer is yes, up to at least a year right now. And I guess is the data that's generated by the portal available in the geospatial formats with all of that archived data?
Yep. Yeah. The API allows you to pull out data in GeoJSON, CSV, shapefile, or KML formats.
Great,
And
great.
so it is the major GIS formats are supported. You can even, if you're just interested in a single incident and you know the name of it, the API supports querying on that and just getting the detections back for that incident.
Oh, good. Yeah,
So
that's
you don't
terrific.
have to sort through like every detection. If you know what you're looking
Yeah.
for, you can use the API to just get back what you need.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. I'm also wondering once a fire is detected, because I've been using it for a little bit, once a fire is detected, how much after that initial detect does that pixel show up? I mean, if a fire starts and then, goes for 2 weeks, do the pixels detect every time, it updates, or is it solely based on, like the heat signature that it's finding?
Yeah, so it is if there is heat, it's designed to detect it as continuously as possible. So if you have a fire in the landscape, it's established and it's active for a long period, every time the satellite scans that fire, it should be in the data set.
Okay.
It will have a tracking ID associated with it and a duration attribute. So it'll allow you to know, oh, this is a fire that has been detected for this period of time consecutively. So you could filter on what is a new fire versus what is a fire that is you're now continuously monitoring as opposed to the initial detection.
So like in the dashboard, when it says detected, 2 minutes ago or 3 minutes ago, if a fire is under the mesoscale sector, which is getting imagery every minute, will it keep saying, 1 minute ago, same spot, 1 minute ago, same spot, or how does that work?
No, that only happens upon the initial detection with a given input data stream. So if
Okay.
it's not gonna, it will only highlight it the first time it was detected. The detection that will continue, but that particular dashboard is
Yeah.
extracting the subset of detections that correspond to initial detections for a given
Okay,
stream.
yeah, that sounds good. And so if this fire that's initially detected and you send out an alert on the dashboard that says 3 minutes ago this was detected in, Oklahoma, um, and then it passes a certain threshold where it's a certain size or whatever. Do you or can you send out another alert saying, hey, okay, this has gone from this to more like a moderate or major fire, that it warns people again? Because, they might, if they're looking at the dashboard, they might not see that first one with a little tiny heat signature, but it might get major in, an hour.
There are no further notifications. However, there is another dashboard and map that highlights the intensity of established fires on the landscape. So that does allow that to be tracked more readily. And of course, like the imagery and the detections are constantly updating, so you can just continue to monitor the satellite loops to see all that information that way as well. But right
Yeah,
now, no, there's nothing baked into the system that re-notifies after initial detection based on some uptick in activity. The only exception to that would be is if you have a fire that becomes was active, then becomes completely inactive and undetectable for a period of time, and then becomes active again. You will get an
gotcha.
alert on it when it becomes active again.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great. The other
Dave,
question I had. Yep.
Dave, let me pause here because I want to see if there's other people who have questions as well. Because in case there are other people also have questions, and
Sure.
can you hold on in case the
I
others have
can.
questions?
I
Yeah.
can.
Let's see if there's any others on the call who might have questions for Mike before we go back to the question that they may have. If not, Dave, go ahead. People are just being very polite for you to ask a question.
Yeah, no, please just raise your hand. I mean, you can tell it's very exciting, and I think hopefully you and the entire team are really proud of this development. I was just wondering from the standpoint of responders, and you were saying that one, I think in Norman or Oklahoma, they integrated it into their operations center, or even Cal OES has done the same. How do they how do they use NGFS? Do they respond to every detect? Are they in a period of evaluation to determine what seems to be their threshold for responding, or what's kind of like happens in the day in the life of a Cal OES with NGFS?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on where. I'll start with Oklahoma. So
Hmm.
Oklahoma, if they get a new detection, they will look at that against a map and of known controlled burns that are happening, because in their state, that controlled burns have to be documented. And so if they get a detection and it is not in a location that where they expect there to be fire on the landscape, they will actually respond to it. And they've been doing that for um, probably about a year and a half now, pretty
Hmm.
successfully. They've shown up at they've shown up to like a property owner, and said, "Hey, we're here to like put out the fire," and the property owner didn't know there was a fire on their land, right? I mean, there've been a few instances of that. Cal OES, so California has a lot of technology. They have a really sophisticated um, set of tools for fire. So for them, this gets integrated with 911 and all of their other data sources. So if they see an NGFS detection, they don't already know about it from another data source. One of the things they can do is they can move cameras, reposition cameras to try to find the fire in the cameras and corroborate it. And then also just initiate a local response to check on it. but those are pretty much the basic actions.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. I have one more, and that is, does the NGFS feed into the like the HER and other smoke models? Like when there are detections from hotspots, does that kick off perhaps smoke forecasts, or is that in the plan?
Yeah, I mean, is yes. So not in any like uh well, there's a lot going on in the space, but the NGFS will replace the existing legacy algorithm. So as such, it will have to support that downstream workflow because those
Yeah,
models are driven by the fire rate of power detections from the satellite. So in preparation for that, there is a lot of offline work going on with the model developers and the fire emissions
mm,
folks to ensure that everything is ready for that to happen. In addition, I think GSL is running an experimental model right now, which is actually being driven by because the model itself is experimental, it's being driven by the experimental NGFS detections. Um, I, I'm, I'm spacing on the details of which model that is and
sure.
what its availability is, but I believe that is running in a routine mechanism. So yes, it will. Those connections are all there, and that will be in place in the future when this is fully operational. But right now, it's preparation mode.
That's great. Thanks, Douglas.
Well, thanks, Dave. I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay first because I can ask
Sure.
later. Lindsay?
So hello, this was really great. And I'm sorry, I had a little sound issue, so I hope this isn't a repeat question, but feel free to pass on it if so. But yeah, this was awesome to see. I have maybe a bit of a like, it's more of a like fringe use case question, perhaps, but I'm working with a team interested in using, or like that's specifically looking at fire data to better understand emissions and air quality impacts and emissions of all types, including greenhouse gas emissions, but everything air quality, particularly to feed into inventory systems for more on an annual basis. And so I realize this is probably a little bit of a downstream application from the more like real time and like a more immediate systems that you have already set up. That's much more important. But I was wondering if you could speak to or have any sort of thinking about the potential for this, for like these data services to support more like annual summary analysis or sort of more of this sort of downstream integrations, if that's on the radar at all.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay, for the question. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So this is a very active project. It's a partnership between NOAA, DOI, and USDA, and so one of the active areas of development right now that is at a fairly nascent stage, but will over the coming years mature next 2 years, is the development of higher order fire analytics products from this. So that would be more summary level, daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal, maybe annual, but it would aggregate the data in a way that would be more conducive to the type of application that you're interested in. So, that's,
Great.
I would say
I
stay
look
tuned in
forward to it.
in the coming years, but
Great.
that it is an R&D activity, so it's not, we'll see what readiness level it gets to, but the intent is to make that happen.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Thanks, Lindsay. And Mike, I'm just going to follow up on a question that Dave, and also relate to what Lindsay was asking, is that the user capacity about using that specific data and also the portal, because California, like you said, they have a lot staff capacity of doing fire related things, but you showed the example of Helene, and then the system detecting some of the heat in the western North Carolina after Helene because the down trees of increasing fuel and then increasing fire risk. And when we were talking with the State Forest Service here, they lost a lot of staff capacity And so how are you engaging with those different parts of the country who might have limited capacity of integrating those like data portals and systems into their decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a good question, Douglas. So yeah, I mean, I think it was about a little more than a year ago that NCEI had a stakeholder engagement workshop on the wildfire threat following Helene, with all of the impact to the trees and subsequent implications, not only for fuels but also for response, the ability to reach a fire and to be able to manage. So very familiar that I recognize this is going to probably be a decade-long problem. Yeah, and so I do think where capacity is limited, that's where the national we're working very closely with the National Weather Service. Every National Weather Service forecast office now has access to the NGFS within their internal systems and through these externally available applications. So on high impact fire weather days, they have the ability to monitor the NGFS, and if they see something of concern, they can work with their local partners on that. So they can essentially be a conduit to partners that maybe don't. Now, the Weather Service, that's pending they have the capacity to do it, right? They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to provide hotspot notifications. That is, as a product, that is an official product now, but it depends on availability of staffing to be able to do that. But the bottom line is we've been working for several years with the Weather Service and have done a lot of training and outreach so that they can exploit this tool. It makes it easier for them, and then it helps them help their partners.
Well, thanks, Mike. That's great. Let's see if there's any other questions.
I just had a quick one, Mike, and maybe Douglas may have asked you this beforehand, but can you send your slides to Douglas and or myself or Tim so we'll put the video onto the ESIP YouTube page so people can see your briefing, and we'd also love to make the slides available too. I know they're updating sort of in real time, but they're great. They're really great.
Yeah, I can. It's in Google, so it's easy for me to share it with Douglas, and then Douglas can
Okay.
be the conduit for you guys to put them where you need to put them. But
That's great. Thanks, Mike. I think we have another question from Xiaohua.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't have a click to raise hand, so I have to speak for myself. Yeah, this is Xiaohua from NASA. So NASA also have firms. So I wonder, like, do you have a recommendation when to use NASA to and when to use NOAA's to?
yeah, so that's a good question, and I do coordinate with NASA. I'm meeting with the firms team in the not too distant future, but so yeah, I mean, this was designed we didn't want to replicate what firms is doing. So the focus of what we're doing is really on like real time, rapidly updating data. And so I think that's the role it's playing right now. Whereas firms has a much longer archive. I use it all the time to go back and look at fire weather days because it's so easy to do. It also provides that bigger picture snapshot of fire activity that it aggregates all the detections from the sensors in a way that just makes it easy to display, where we don't have that capability right now. So although they're both like satellite product based, I think they're doing very different things right now. So I think they're complementary.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone. I think we are about at time. So I want to thank you again, Mike, for presenting today. And this is a lot exciting developments. I already shared the link with many others that I can find. And so we invite everyone to join us to thank Mike again. And also we have our May session from NASA team presenting the Wildland Fire from the NASA side as well. Tim, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's also Anthony Boyd from Development Seed is another one, is the co-presenter with that. And I'd say there was discussion about the summer meeting. We have not developed our proposal for a summer meeting, but I think there's a lot of interest. And there's one more unscheduled meeting or like afternoon wildfire cluster meeting before then that we are looking for content for. So if anyone has any ideas for content, we'd love to hear it.
Well, thanks, everyone, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.